Hi guys, Molly here inside the newsroom at Fox 5 DC. Welcome to our digital stream, our show. We're very happy to have you on our stream today as we bring together all the live feeds and videos and everything that's happening in our world, DC and around the nation and around the world, of course. Today we're remembering Barbara Bush, who died last night at the age of 92, and she leaves just an incredible legacy. So many, not only journalists, but friends and family, lawmakers, talking about this woman, about the impact she made on their lives. And it is really interesting to go back into the archives and see some of these old speeches and quotations from her as both First Lady and mother to a president. Of course, the second woman only ever to do that, next to Abigail Adams, way back in our presidential history. But today we're remembering her. We also have a live video, a live stream right now outside the George Bush Presidential Library. This is in Houston. Take a look here. This is a live look down there. We'll be shooting you down there time to time when there are possibly live shots happening or other reports happening down there, or just sort of to get a glimpse of what's going on and feel the energy down in Houston for this sort of remembering day of remembrance. Now her visiting hours and sort of a public type of wake isn't really happening until Friday, so things were kind of getting pushed out to the weekend. But for now, kind of monitoring these cameras and seeing what happens on that front. But something that I think struck me was definitely her speech to Wellesley College in 1990. If you get a chance, look that up. There's some really great quotations in that people are using today to kind of talk about her and remember her life and legacy. But let's shoot it over right now to the words of George W. Bush and Laura Bush themselves. This is what they had to say in the outpouring of condolences that they were getting, of course, from across the world. Here's their statement.
Laura and I and our entire family are very grateful for people's prayers and sympathies. It's it's the end of a beautiful life. She was warm and wonderful till you got out of line, and she wasn't too warm and wonderful. She was awesome.
She was funny and fierce and said her mind. She was a great role model for me, for sure. I learned how to be a first lady. I'd watched her the whole time she was first lady, and when she campaigned with President Bush. So and I actually had the conversation with her early on when he first started to run, that she would work on literacy, that she thought that was the most important. And if everyone could read and write, a lot of problems would be solved.
And you picked. Laura and I went over to see her a week ago Saturday, and we had a wonderful visit. She was strong, lucid,
funny still.
Funny. She and I were needling each other, and the doctor came in, and she turned to the doctor and said, "You want to know why George W. is the way he is?" And the doctor looked somewhat surprised. She said, "Because I drank and smoked when I was pregnant with him."
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, she's funny, and I had a beautiful visit with her. When it looked like, yesterday morning on the phone. And she didn't say much, but I told her I loved her. And here's the thing. She had great faith. She truly believes that there's an afterlife, that she'll be wonderfully received in the arms of a loving God, and therefore did not fear death. And as a result of her soul being comforted on the deathbed, my soul is comforted. Here.
So that was just a quick minute and a half or so statement from George W. and Laura Bush, but she definitely seemed like an interesting, quite tough lady. I'm really looking forward to more stories coming out about her and more reports and people talking about her life and legacy this week. Meanwhile, guys, the other big top story, as you know, we brought this live to our stream yesterday, is that Southwest emergency landing yesterday in Philadelphia that left one dead. Now, that fatality was not confirmed till later in the afternoon, so we updated our stream for you and threw up some of the relevant information. But I want to show you today the Capitol dome with the flag. This is half staff here. This photo taken by our photojournalist, Freddie Wheeler, who was out there this morning. You can see just that gorgeous shot. Rather, the flag is half staff actually for Barbara Bush, but I wanted to show you that in tandem with this story, also going into the second piece of sort of top news from today. So in case you missed it, I want to play out the NTSB press conference from about 12 hours ago. So this was yesterday, but because we sort of stopped short in our stream was sort of covering a variety of angles and things. I'm not quite sure if we were able to play this out for you, but the latest from the officials in NTSB about that quite harrowing experience on Southwest Airlines yesterday that was really captured via a lot of social media. The official word on what happened with that engine, crews are really still on the scene this morning in Philadelphia figuring it out and getting the details, but the incident itself, more details coming out that Tammy Jo Schultz, the female pilot, was the one who landed the plane safely. And it was quite a scary experience, quite scary for us to kind of even track it and bring you that breaking news. But Flight 1380 eventually made it down after people on that plane said they felt like it was just plummeting down to the earth. You can imagine that was quite a fright, and really the plane ride from hell after that woman got sucked out of the window up to about her waist, according to witnesses. People tried to pull her back in. It's possible she hit her head on something. We don't quite know, but we know that there was some sort of head injury, and she ultimately died later. So one fatality in that. For Southwest Airlines, though, that is their first fatality in history. So kind of a scary moment for them. I know the CEO was speaking out about that accident yesterday, but officials from NTSB are really the ones to kind of delve into what exactly happened, and they had their official report. Like I said, this was just about 12 hours ago. Here's the latest from NTSB.
This afternoon to begin our investigation of the engine failure and fatality of an onboard passenger on Southwest Flight 1380. We deal with a lot of things like this, and it's never easy. I certainly want to offer our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of the lady whose life was lost today. And also, we recognize that the passengers and crew on board that airplane have gone through a lot as well, and we'd like to offer our thoughts and prayers to all of those. I think most of you know the NTSB. We're an independent federal agency charged by Congress to investigate transportation accidents, to determine the probable cause, and to issue safety recommendations to prevent the reoccurrence of these sorts of things. We've brought a team with specialty in power plants, airworthiness, to look at the airworthiness of the aircraft itself. Power plants, of course, will be looking at the engine. We have a specialist in survival factors, operations, and in Washington we have our recorders experts as well as folks that will be looking at the maintenance records of this particular airplane. We came in, I mentioned, around 4:30. We put the recorders on the same airplane that we came in on, shipped them back to Washington. A preliminary audition of the cockpit voice recorder was done this evening, and just a few minutes ago we got the download from them. And here's the factual information that we have at this time. Southwest Flight 1380, a Boeing 737-700, departed LaGuardia at 10:43 a.m., destined for Dallas Love Field. The flight up to the point of the engine failure was routine. Approximately 20 minutes after takeoff, as the aircraft was passing through approximately 32,500 feet, multiple aural alerts and warnings sounded in the cockpit. The crew donned their oxygen mask, and they reported to air traffic control that they had a number one engine failure. They had a number one engine fire, and they were operating single engine, and they were initiating an emergency descent. They requested vectors to the nearest suitable airport and were promptly vectored, cleared direct to the Philadelphia International Airport. The crew declared an emergency and requested that emergency vehicles be standing by. They requested an extended final approach, longer than usual, and because they were concerned with potential aircraft controllability issues, they elected to land the airplane with flaps 5 instead of the normal flap setting for a Boeing 737, which would either be flaps 30 or flaps 40. Once they were on final approach, they clarified to the tower that there was no engine fire, but they were operating single engine, and they reported parts of the engine were missing. They delegated their duties and ran the necessary checklist. There were 144 passengers and 5 crew aboard the aircraft. Now, at about the same location as the event unfolded, later, someone found a Southwest Airlines engine cowling at Burnville, Pennsylvania, which is about 70 miles northwest of here. When we got to Philadelphia, of course, we wanted to proceed immediately to the aircraft, and our specialist immediately focused on a missing fan blade. So, of course, as you look in the engine from the front of the airplane, there are 24 fan blades that, of course, normally rotate, and they help bring air into the engine. One of the fan blades, the number 13 fan blade, was separated and missing, and it was separated at the point where it would come into the hub. So there's a hub, and then the fan blades attach to the hub. So this fan blade was broken right at the hub, and our preliminary examination of this was that there's evidence of metal fatigue where the blade separated. We located that immediately and sent photos to our materials lab in Washington, and so that's what the preliminary exam has found. There's much more to be done on this. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, the NTSB will hold our organizational meeting whereby we establish investigative protocols and designate parties to the investigation. Even though we did an initial audition of the cockpit voice recorder this evening in the recorder's lab in Washington, coming up, we will convene a formal cockpit voice recorder group to create a transcript of the CVR. Throughout the next several days, our investigators will be on scene to document factual information. Our mission is certainly to understand not only what happened, but why it happened, so that we can prevent things like this from happening in the future. While we are here, we will not determine the cause. The investigation is very extensive. We're just literally at the very, very beginning of the investigation. I would imagine that an investigation like this, to do it right, and we will do it right, would take between about 12 and 15 months. Since we're just literally on day one, just at the very beginning, we don't have a great deal of factual information to report at this time. However, we will keep you informed the best we can. And for the latest information on the next media briefing or other information that we discover, you may follow us at Twitter. Our handle is @NTSB_newsroom, or you can follow us at www.ntsb.gov. There's been a lot reported in the media already about this event. Some of it is factual and some of it is not. We do know that there is onboard pictures and video, and so we would request that passengers or crew that were on board the airplane, we would like to see your video. We would like to see your photographs of what was going on inside the airplane after this event unfolded. And you may submit that to an email address, which is witness@ntsb.gov. So again, we are requesting that people that have pictures or video from onboard the airplane, we would like to see that. Email address is witness@ntsb.gov. Before I wrap it up, I'd like to thank the Philadelphia International Airport, their police department, their airport rescue and firefighting facility, their operations folks. The airport CEO is here, greeted us when we walked in the terminal. We've gotten excellent support from them. In just a moment, I'll take questions. When I do, I'd like for you to raise your hand. When I call on you, please state your name and your outlet. So we'll start right here.
Chris Van Cleve, CBS News. There is a pending airworthiness directive on the 737 in this general engine type, looking at 15,000 cycles. It grew out of the last Southwest Airlines engine issue. Does there need to be more scrutiny on these engines as these planes get older?
Well, Chris has asked, there's an airworthiness directive out for certain models of the CFM56 engine. Does there need to be greater scrutiny for these engines as the airplanes get older or have more time on them? And what we want to do is see if anything in that airworthiness directive that came out from an event 2 years ago involving another Southwest airplanes that landed in Pensacola, we want to see if this part might have been subjected to that airworthiness directive. I will say that in the last hour, I've spoken to Southwest Airlines CEO Gary Kelly, and he has told me that Southwest will immediately begin enhanced inspections procedures involving ultrasonic inspection. They will begin that and plan to have that on their entire fleet conducted very soon.
If I can ask a quick follow-up.
All right, follow-up.
You're a former 737 pilot yourself. How unusual is what you saw today at this airplane?
Well, the question is, yes, I flew a 737 for 10 years. How unusual is it to have what we saw today? And it's very unusual. And so we are taking this event extremely seriously. This should not happen, and we want to find out why it happened so that we can make sure that the preventive measures are put in place. I think I told, yes.
Can you describe how big of a fire, this engine fire this was, how long it took to come out, if it was still on fire when the plane landed on the ground?
So the question is regarding an engine fire. Earlier when we did a press briefing before we left Washington, I told a reporter in response to a question that there was no engine fire. However, we do know that the crew did report initially an engine fire. There's no indication by looking at the outside of the engine that there was a fire. However, there are fire wires that when they are, it is possible and even likely that once this fan blade separated, it activated an engine fire warning in the cockpit. But whether or not there was an actual fire with the engine, I do not believe there was an actual fire, but they could have gotten a fire warning. But again, later, as they were on final approach, they indicated there was no fire.
So as they arrived on the ground, was there any smoke whatsoever?
I have no indication that there was. Any fire when they landed the airplane. There's a question right here.
Can you tell us who the pilot was and her actions in getting that plane safely on the ground with all of that?
Well, I do not have the who was the pilot, what was the pilot's name. There were two pilots, of course. One was a male, the other was a female. The captain was a female, and I listened to not the cockpit voice recorder because that was auditioned in Washington, but I did listen to the air traffic control communications because we have been given that from the ATC, and it certainly sounded to me like they did an excellent job. The folks who did hear the CVR said they did a nice job, did their checklist and procedures. So my hat's off to them. As a fellow airline pilot, my hat's certainly off to them. I'll take a question back here, sir.
Mr. Sumwalt, Tom Costello with NBC News. Can you talk about how insidious metal fatigue can be? There's already evidence, you said, of metal fatigue at the source of this break. And we've seen metal fatigue in so many accidents over the years, all the way back to United 235. Can you talk about what your concern may be that this could be a bigger problem than just this one instance?
Well, Tom wants to know how insidious or how much of a problem is metal fatigue in engines, and it is very much of a problem. And so there are supposed to be inspections, mostly non-destructive testing, to look for any potential cracks that may be there as a result of metal fatigue or other reasons. But we are very concerned about it. Just a few months ago, we finished up an investigation of another airliner, completely different type of engine that had a metal fatigue going all the way back to the manufacturer of the disc. So we are very concerned about it. There needs to be proper inspection mechanisms in place to check for this before there's a catastrophic event. There's a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
AJ Ross, WABC New York. You mentioned flaps 5 being selected by the pilot during landing. Can you explain that further and the degree of difficulty this was in landing this plane?
Yeah, so the question regards landing at flaps 5. As I mentioned, the normal flap setting for landing on a 737 is either flaps 30 or 40. They landed with flaps 5. That would mean that they were going to have a faster approach speed by a good bit. And and they did that because of concerns about controllability. So, question right here.
Chairman, would you say, based on what you know right now, that it is utterly amazing how this pilot was able to bring this plane safely down?
Well, thank you. The question is, how would I describe the pilot's performance? I think I've already done that. They are trained. I know this because I lived this for 24 years. Every 6 months, every 9 months, whatever the interval is for Southwest, they're in the simulator and they practice emergency descents. Routinely, pilots practice losing an engine. That's something that practiced every time we go to the simulator. And it appears to me that they did the job as professional airline pilots are trained and expected to do. So again, my hat's off to them. It's a question right here.
Hi, Mr. Zumwalt. David Spunk with CBS here in Philadelphia. You talked about Burnville, Pennsylvania. I believe it's in Berks County. What exactly was found there? I just want to make sure I understand a potential piece of the plane. Yeah, so what was found up in Bucks County and Burnville? Berks County. Yeah. The cowling. So as you've seen from the pictures, the outside of the engine, the cowling that surrounds the engine was missing, and a piece of that was found in this location about, 60 miles northwest of here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
one more question.
Quickly, can you tell us the last time that engine was inspected?
When was the last time that engine was inspected? I do not know that. That's why we formed a maintenance records group that will go to Dallas, to Southwest's facilities to go over all of the maintenance inspections. I want to thank you all for covering this story. We'll keep you posted as best as we can. Thank you very much.
You said the captain was a female, is that correct?
All right, guys, so the latest details there from NTSB, again, that was live yesterday, so I wanted to play that back to give you sort of the scoop on it. I didn't know some of those details about the metal and the engine and sort of where things connected to the hub and whatnot, but I'll tell you, interestingly, my father, who's actually employed in aerospace, was giving me some details on the engine yesterday, and we were texting about it, and he said it's very rare that this would happen in this case, but that happens sometimes, like he explained, metal fatigue in certain parts of these engines. It can happen with older engines, unfortunately, and as the representative there mentioned, it is quite rare for them and definitely quite a scary experience for the woman who unfortunately passed away after that incident, and everyone on that plane. I think 144 of them who went through that yesterday. Actually, we have a picture of this woman. Here's our slate here for this woman, rest in peace, Jennifer Reardon. She was a mom of 2 who died yesterday. She's from New Mexico, and she was said to be the bedrock of her family, known for charity work and leadership in business. So obviously our hearts go out to that family. Meanwhile, sort of in the other scope of top news, we have the story of Barbara Bush, who passed away yesterday, sort of in the evening at the age of 92. We had known that she had had some health issues and was being taken off, given treatment, and was just going to sort of die naturally. And her family was in the know of this, and we knew it too. And so down right now in Houston is a live shot outside of the Bush Library. Casey Stiegel from Fox News is there doing live shots, and it looks like he's about to get ready to do one. So we'll check in there if that comes up for us to see what he has to say about Barbara Bush and about the visiting hours and everything going on down in Houston. So let's pop this up and get some live information from Houston.
So when I reference the funeral home over this shoulder, I'm just going to say, you know, there's a very heavy police presence at the funeral home back here in Houston where Mrs. Bush is being prepared for. So just, you don't have to go into it. I'm just going to reference. I was just basically wanting to know if I do this or which shoulder is best.
If something goes haywire, our first station doesn't know what PL is.
What's that?
Our first station doesn't know what PL is.
No one has asked us today, but I am coordinated. You know what? Oh. I was like, what did you guys do? I would expect it. But then still,
yeah, the spot. You gotta have somebody to replace it.
right, that's what I said, yeah.
Who are the anchors?
Gassia? Three of them.
Gassia, Mike, and what? Gassia, Mike, and
Is it Kyle? Gassia, Kyle, and Mike. Sal, S-A-L.
S-A-L, Sam, Alabama, Lewis, Sal. Okay. I don't know. Here we go. Stand by. Gassia, Mike, Sal, good morning to you guys. Yeah, we're standing outside of the funeral home actually here in West Houston where there is a very heavy police presence at this hour, and it is where Mrs. Bush is being prepared
for public viewing. That will happen on Friday, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. It will be happening at the church long attended by the Bushes here in Houston. The former First Lady will lay in repose from noon Friday until midnight at St. Martin's Episcopal Church here in Houston. Then on Saturday, her private funeral will be held, invite only. More than 1,500 dignitaries are expected, including First Lady Melania Trump. From there, Mrs. Bush will be taken by motorcade up to College Station, Texas, where she will be buried at her husband's presidential library and museum, the family plot there, where their daughter Robin is. She died of leukemia just before her 4th birthday. It is also the ultimate resting place of George H.W. Bush himself. Now, we spoke to George W. Bush and his wife Laura this morning up in Dallas, and George, former president of the United States, saying that his mother remained funny and had that classic wit and sense of humor right up until the very end. And they say that the world is a better place because of Barbara Bush. Of course, she was a tireless advocate for literacy, and we've seen, instead of flowers and balloons up at the Bush Library, up in College Station, up the road from us, people dropping off books there, obviously to pay homage to her support of literacy and the importance of reading. So those are starting to be placed there outside of the museum and library as people are paying tribute to a woman that did so much. Back to you guys. Absolutely. You know, there are some historians that say that she was involved behind the scenes in a lot of policy decisions that were made, and that she was played a very big role, as most first ladies do. I think that's also sort of underestimated, the role of the First Lady, and they do contribute so much to society. And, you know, Barbara Bush, just a remarkable woman, that classic white hair, and the pearls that she made famous. And they actually have an event scheduled in Houston tomorrow at City Hall, and they're encouraging people to wear blue, a favorite color of hers, and they're encouraging women to wear large pearl necklaces in honor of Mrs. Bush. So a lot of events going on over the next several days to pay tribute to her. Yeah. Thank you, San Francisco.
All right, so back in the newsroom here, just a cool little insight there, a look into Casey Stiegel's live shot for our San Francisco station on Barbara Bush. But we have also prepared some of the packages that our sister stations and our network has put together for today's top stories, and we'll lead with the one on Barbara Bush. So here's some of the top stories of today, Wednesday, April 18th. We're glad that you're on with us on the stream. Take a look at some of these top stories.
Died at her home in Houston yesterday. She is being remembered as a first lady who had a grandmotherly image, but one who was never afraid to speak her mind. Barbara Bush's crowning achievement in life may be this: having been at the center of what has been called a political dynasty, a large, close-knit family that she would fiercely defend.
That hurts when people criticize George W., and don't ever dare do it in front of me. Yeah. Or behind me, really.
Born in 1925, Barbara Bush would marry the first man she ever kissed, George H.W. Bush. They would live in Texas at first, but George Bush's political career would take them around the world. They would have 6 children, including a daughter who died at the age of 3. It was a life that would eventually take them to the White House, where her attention turned to literacy. Known as being something of a disciplinarian with a sharp tongue, listen to how deftly she deflected a question about her health just 3 years ago.
Well, I just got tired of, I had a little pneumonia. Okay, literacy.
Literacy, a defining issue for Barbara Bush's public life, but her family was everything. Fox's Dr. Mark Siegel is a family friend who described her final days.
Yesterday, she was sitting with the former president all day, holding hands, and he was with her when she passed. She was strong and courageous till the end.
There will be a private funeral for Mrs. Bush on Saturday in Houston. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
The U.S. Justice Department is again going after opioid manufacturers. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is proposing new regulations limiting opioid production. They would change how the DEA establishes so-called production quotas. Pharmaceutical companies would have to work with various agencies to justify large amounts of pills. Ultimately, the feds would have the final say.
If DEA believes a company's opioids are being diverted or misused, then they will be able to reduce the amount of opioids the company can produce and sell.
The vows to end the crisis are more than just talk. State and federal authorities on Tuesday conducted a massive crackdown in West Virginia and Michigan. The target? A multi-state distribution network called the Peterson Drug Trafficking Organization. West Virginia U.S. Attorney Michael Stewart says this was no street-level raid.
Today's arrest was not a matter of picking up addicts or picking up folks who are corner store drug dealers. This was a matter of trying to change supply.
Tuesday's operation plus other smaller recent raids have netted enough fentanyl to kill a whopping 250,000 people. Stewart and Sessions promise more crackdowns are coming.
Business as usual is over. Ending the drug crisis is a top priority.
According to Sessions, there will soon be substantial increases in funding to combat the opioid crisis. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
I think I can speak for Texans when we say we loved Barbara. She was an amazing woman.
High praise for former First Lady Barbara Bush. People have been praying and paying tribute since her health started to decline, but they were still heartbroken to learn of her passing Tuesday night.
It's a great loss for everybody.
Daughter-in-law Laura Bush writes on Twitter, "I'm missing my mother-in-law and role model tonight. Barbara Bush was a loving mother and grandmother. The world is poor without her in it. Rest in peace, dear Bar." In her first year as First Lady, she established the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. She strongly believed reading was crucial to social and economic mobility.
I learned, from Mrs. Bush that it's not about me, it's not about we in this organization, it's about the people who need help and doing whatever we can to make sure that people are empowered with the joy of reading.
But to the owners of Fuzzy's Pizza in Houston, where the former first couple was often seen having dinner, Barbara Bush was simply a beloved customer.
I can just vision her being in this restaurant, and how friendly and kind she was.
First Lady historian Carl Anthony thinks her warm demeanor and approachable nature made it easy for people to connect with her.
There was something very fresh and appealing about her. She really won a lot of admirers from both sides of the political aisle.
The funeral will be held Saturday at the church she regularly attended with her husband in Houston. Barbara Bush was 92. In New York, Jackie Ibanez, Fox News.
Federal health officials are investigating a Salmonella outbreak linked to eggs.
In this particular Salmonella outbreak, we have 23 infections in 9 states. There have been 6 hospitalizations, and luckily there have been no deaths reported.
Roseacre Farms, the nation's second largest egg producer, has voluntarily recalled more than 200 million eggs sold under multiple brand names to grocery stores and restaurants in these 9 states. The company explained in a statement, some of the reported illnesses were linked to grocery stores where Roseacre Farms does not supply eggs at all. Nevertheless, the company conducted the recall out of an abundance of caution to ensure that we are doing everything possible to preserve the trust trust that we have built with consumers and their families for many decades.
So this is another large egg outbreak that we're seeing eggs that were sold in many stores across the country in a lot of different brands. We really want people to check the eggs that are in their refrigerator.
Salmonella outbreaks are common in the U.S., causing an estimated 1.2 million illnesses, 23,000 hospitalizations, and 450 deaths each year, although most people recover after several days of fever, cramps, and other gastrointestinal issues without needing to see a doctor. Consumers can reduce the risk of illness by thoroughly cooking meat and eggs and washing hands and countertops that have come in contact with raw or undercooked food. You can find the product codes for the recalled eggs at FDA.gov. In the current outbreak, the eggs in question were distributed from a farm in Hyde County, North Carolina. Rose Acre Farm says this is the first recall for this facility, which has temporarily suspended delivery of shell eggs. In the meantime, the company is filling orders from its other farms around the country. In Atlanta, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
On Bruce Drive in Fremont, further proof the American dream is alive and well. A 2013 condemned 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with holes in the roof and mildew eating away the interior, just sold for a whopping $1.23 million.
My neighbor told me that, and they said, oh, and cash. I said, oh, yeah, I can't believe it.
Neighbor Yvonne Yen lives next door and 12 years ago bought her home for $750,000. Realtor Larry Gallegos says the price differential reflects demand, as prospective buyers were burning up his phone from dawn till dusk. After a week, he chose one of 5 all-cash offers.
We had a couple offers that were pretty close. But actually my clients, when I first met them, wanted just a little bit more than that with the price they had in their mind. But they ended up being happy with this one.
Gallegos says the sellers are a family that were unable to come to a consensus on keeping the house, so they decided to sell. The buyer actually designs green homes. He had a pocket full of cash. He's going to put his 4,000 square foot masterpiece on this large lot. He actually paid about $230,000 above asking.
There's nothing surprising about this. It's a great example of location, location, location.
David Stark of the Bay East Association of Realtors says buying a teardown to build a dream home reflects a 10-year trend. The Tony Mission San Jose section of Fremont is desirable, with the average home selling here for $1.3 million. He says unlike 2008, today's sky-high prices show no indications a crash is coming.
People are purchasing homes. They're purchasing vacant properties like this. The demand is there. The supply isn't. These prices are sustainable.
Back on the block, residents see both the blessing and curse of living in the land of 7-figure homes.
We're trying to move, because the property tax is cost me like $1,000 a month. And, we have no place to move.
It's a paradox that has some homeowners suffering under high taxes, while others are able to unload their homes, even when they're unlivable. In Fremont, I'm Jesse Gary, KTVU Fox 2 News.
Florida is known for its pristine and free beaches, but that may change as lawmakers draw a line in the sand when it comes to deciding which beaches are public or private. Governor Rick Scott signed into law a new process for local governments and property owners to go to court to determine the status of a beach. And the first of its kind law is not sitting well with tourists.
I don't want to see the beach filled with signs that no trespassing. It's just going to become very ugly.
The move comes in response to ongoing battles in the Sunshine State, with some property owners roping off parts of the beachfront to keep the public away. Experts say the ongoing erosion of Florida's coast has made landowners more aware of their property lines.
And perhaps are becoming more aggressive and assertive about what they think are their rights.
But not all homeowners feel the same way.
I think it's sad that people are not allowed to be on the beach. We like having the people here.
Starting July 1st, this wet sand will remain public property. But if you cross this water line into dry sand behind a home or hotel, you could be asked to move. If there's a dispute, a judge will have to determine which parts of the beach are public or private, depending on the history of the land.
The reason that it became important is that we've had a number of storms over the past couple of years. And those storms have washed out a number of beaches, particularly in the northern part of the state, so that there has not been enough dry sand for the public to enjoy.
But there's still confusion over how to enforce the new policy.
Many landowners don't understand that their title to beachfront property may be subject to the public right to use the dry sand beach and may have been subject to that right for a long time.
Realtors and business owners have opposed the law out of fear that turning away the public would affect their livelihoods. And an online petition has gained over 50,000 supporters calling for the governor and lawmakers to repeal the new measure. In Naples, Florida, Ali Rafa, Fox News.
All right, guys, so a variety of topics for you, a variety of interesting stories. Of course, our top ones being remembering Barbara Bush as we get more legacy accounts of her, and of course some live video down at the Presidential Library in Houston, where Casey Stegall is there doing live shots for the Fox stations. We listened into one of them, giving sort of a recap about how the public can view her body this weekend, Friday into Saturday, when the funeral will be held at a church in the nearby church in town in Houston, and more details to come on that. So we're remembering her today. And then of course also the Southwest emergency landing, that tragedy yesterday, the first fatality for Southwest after an engine failure. I think the NTSB official described it pretty well for even the layperson to kind of understand that a piece of that metal was fatigued or worn down, as I believe can happen in older engines, and they're continuing to investigate the scene. I know this morning crews were on hand already at Philadelphia Airport to check into that and to kind of see what more they can find out, more they can investigate about what really made that plane go down. Some of the videos from inside that plane, though, the social videos, the selfies and the cameras and everybody taking snaps, were just so frightening. Really can't imagine being on that plane. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If you're on the stream, thanks for commenting. Let us know what you're thinking about. We're going to kind of look around for some more video and anything else that's live coming into us today. And we're going to throw up the eagle cam now in Southeast DC. Still those eagles that are growing big. They're getting so big by the day. So let's check into our eagles on this sunny day, but a little bit cold day here in Washington. All right, guys, taking a second to come back into the newsroom here for another hot topic of this week. You've all heard about the Starbucks story, the Starbucks really boycott that's been going on due to some racial bias that was shown in a store in Philadelphia. Now, just yesterday, police released the 911 call, the dispatch that lasted just about 30 seconds, and it resulted in the Starbucks employee calling and talking about this, and then the arrest of 2 black men in Philadelphia. As a result of that, Starbucks has announced that they're taking a day to train their staff for racial unbiased, is what they're calling it. So they're going to close 8,000 stores to do this for their staff. But I do want to play out this sound because we found the video, or a little bit of sound actually, and we were kind of compiling information from our sister station in Philadelphia, Fox 29, that police released this recording that led to the arrest of these 2 black men. In it, you're going to hear a woman saying, "Hey, I have 2 gentlemen in my cafe that aren't purchasing anything." And she gives the address of the Starbucks store, and then the phone call only lasts about 30 seconds. But someone in the communications also referred to the situation as a disturbance, so officers were sent, and then the arrest led, of course, to protests and boycotts of Starbucks, and the CEO of Starbucks, Kevin Johnson, meeting with the men to actually apologize. So check out this video, see if we can get this sound up.
Starbucks at 18th Spruce. All right, please, I'll be on as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 16:40 and 28 seconds.
14:16, getting started on 1801 Spruce at Starbucks. Still at the service center, the group of males refusing to leave. 1801 Spruce.
9x3, I'm with 23 and 24. The months will handle.
Okay. 914, 916, give us there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 16:41 and 08 seconds.
You're pulling up. Back to okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 16:44 and 14 seconds.
Back to
Yeah, keep someone moving here.
Alright. 916, they start over there. 1801 Spruce, and got a night district supervisor start over 1801 Spruce.
What's the job?
I came in with a disturbance at the Starbucks group of males inside caused a disturbance. We got 9x3, 9x2, 9x23, and 24 location. They're requesting another unit along with a supervisor.
Okay.
Okay.
SD3, we're going to head down.
SD3, okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 16:45 and 32 seconds.
Okay, and 9x3, while units are on route, is there anything under control in there?
We should have that too here, but we want to make sure we have enough units before we, Okay,
I got you. Alright, 914, start over there also. I'll hold you out with 16. Okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 16:57 and 14 seconds.
9x3.
9x3.
Yes, sir. Drop me and Mike 24. Each with the number for the rest here is 1801 Spruce.
Okay.
Thursday, April 12, 2018, 17 hours and 27 seconds.
And that sort of finishes it out, guys. As you can see, they sort of pieced together the moments of when they were first called, when they were dispatched, when officers were en route, and everything that kind of transpired after that. This has been sort of a big news item, of course, in the past few days, in the past week or so, and I want to say the viral video first made it around social media. So a lot of this started on Instagram, Twitter, on social media, out there for people to see and people to be, enraged by. And then this became obviously a big movement and a big thing. And like I mentioned, the CEO of Starbucks, Kevin Johnson, apologizing, meeting with the men, talking about how he's going to be training his staff and how Starbucks will make changes going forward. But it's pretty interesting to see this movement, I think. And I think it definitely has been a hot top story leading a lot of our news segments and our news broadcasts as well on TV. So I thought that was interesting because the Philadelphia police released these 911 calls just recently, and they had that recording kind of all pieced together so that even the public could kind of hear what led to the arrest of these men. But meanwhile, guys, looking around for some other stuff to share with you, other videos, obviously live look outside of the Houston Bush Library where Barbara Bush's body will be there for people to pay their respects on Friday. There will be a funeral service on Saturday at a nearby church, and lots of response and condolences sent out to the family, of course, in reaction to her passing yesterday evening. All right, guys, going to take a small break here and bring you back to our DC Eagles. And we'll be tracking anything else that comes in that's live. If you have any thoughts or comments, leave them in the live chat. We're here with you on the weekdays, live from the DC newsroom. And we're going to be just tracking in what comes in live right now. Just the live shot outside of the Bush Library for now. And any other video that we see, we're going to bring you those stories. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you soon. All right, let's take it back into the newsroom here, guys. We're live at Fox 5 DC. I'm Molly Nevola on our digital studio today. I know a little bit dry, a little quiet in our studio today, but we are looking around for any news that might be interesting and relevant to bring to you. And I want to make a mention too, if any of you guys are into podcasts, maybe true crime podcasts or cold cases, as you might have been aware, if you're aware of what we do here at Fox 5, last year we released an awesome series of podcasts hosted by Sarah Fraser, and then her sidekicks, of course, Judith Ayers and Ronnie, the photographer in this case, and did a lot of the production and the editing, the Mansion Murders. And it had to do with an old cold case, murder case, a local story. We're kind of continuing on that with that series, and our very own Bob Barnard, who you've seen on here before, our morning reporter, he's the host of this new podcast that has to do with the Hoggle sister and brother, Sarah and Jacob Hoggle, two kids who went missing 3.5 years ago. And this morning, Bob was up in our studio to do a little interview with the father of these children, Troy. And I'm going to play out this interview for you to get a little taste as to what this podcast is going to be about. But more importantly, it's an interesting story, revealing more details about this case. Troy Turner, like I mentioned, the father, is interviewed this morning and talking about what to look ahead to for this podcast, what it might reveal about the disappearance of these young Maryland siblings, Sarah and Jacob. Their mom had mental illness and was apprehended. I believe she was charged with the murder, but nothing ever became of that after that. She was just charged. Anyway, you'll understand it more in this interview, but the whole case has really mystified the father, police, prosecutors, and people generally in this community for more than 3 years. And Bob Barnard is going to speak to this saga and examine the case and really glean what we can find out now about it. So check out this interview from this morning.
Hey, Holly, good morning. Yes, unfortunately, this is a story with no ending right now. The children are still missing now 3.5 years later. Catherine Hoggle has been charged in the children's murders, but again, there are no bodies. She has not been able to be put on trial yet because the courts and the doctors out at the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital, Psychiatric Hospital in Jessup, Maryland, have determined she is not competent to stand trial. So her next court hearing, even though she's been charged with murder, is not until next November. In the meantime, the children are still missing, and that's where it stands. It's, again, a story without an ending. And joining us now to talk about this is Troy Turner. He is the father of Sarah and Jacob Hoggle. And Troy, we saw you there. I mean, for 3.5 years, you've been out front and center trying to find your children. People find it hard to believe that they are still missing.
I still find it hard to believe. I mean, it's just one of those things where you just got to keep going until you figure it out. I mean, now we're at the point, where she's been charged with 2 murders. We're running around looking for the bodies, and they're just not home. And no matter what, we want to bring them home.
You want to bring them home. For the longest time, it was out there like that they might be somewhere, and we'd love to bring them home alive as older children now. In your heart, though?
It's a matter of it doesn't make sense any other way. All the scenarios where they would be out there, or they're somewhere else, they're far away, someone has them, and she couldn't get herself out of a 4-block radius in Germantown in 4 days, so it's not realistic to think that she has my kids in Europe somewhere or something.
Now, she has been charged with murder, but only charged. She's not gone to trial yet. The case has not been laid out there and presented against her, but you believe she's responsible.
Right. There's things that I can't necessarily put out there publicly right now that'll be brought up in the trial that lead me to believe as well that Catherine Hoggle killed my children. And part of my problem with it is that she's been protected through this whole process. One of the things that you were talking about was that that Clifton T. Perkins deemed her incompetent. That's not on them. It's actually, competency is more of a legal terminology, so it's the judge's job to determine if she's competent. I mean, you could be completely out there but still be competent to stand trial if you understand the process around you and you're capable of helping your defense. I personally have spoken to her, and I know for a fact that that's true. She's actually run through the entire process with me, so I mean, that's just part of the frustration.
And in this podcast, we do speak to a criminal psychologist who has worked at Perkins. not on this particular case, said it would be really difficult if you're in a hospital setting, watched basically all the time, to fake it. But you still have your doubts.
Well, one of the things she is she's very manipulative. She also, one of the things I believe part of what she does is keeping to herself. There's not a lot of interaction to watch, and then as we get close to her coming in, you know, for a competency hearing, then there's always some kind of problem. If you notice, that's where things will come out about she tried to escape, or she had violent outbursts. It's always right around that time frame.
So she's charged with murder. The last one who is known to be with each of these children, you have an older child who is fine, now 9 years old. You and Catherine were never married, but these are your children.
Right.
Together. One of the things we mentioned in the podcast is that you went to Annapolis in the last couple of months, pleading for a change in the law. It didn't go anywhere. You're hoping to hit it next year.
I'll be there every session until they close the loophole and protect children's state.
What is that? Can you hit us briefly with what it was you were trying to do?
The way things stand now, there's kind of the judges are even kind of hamstrung in a way, because you have the time frame for misdemeanors where they can be held for 3 years. Then there's 5 years under felony charges. And after that, it says for extraordinary circumstances, which there's no definition for that. And it's hard for a judge to kind of just create something that's never been there. I guess you do have, like, you know, some judges who will kind of, you know, put themselves out there like that, but most of them don't want to. So we're trying to kind of define it better and protect the children. And it's not even it's not a punishment thing for mentally ill people. It's more of a protection for minors. So if you have a child who's going to be in danger, like in this case, the hospital has put out there that my son is in danger if Catherine is walking around. And if that's the case, one, it was confusing me because they pretty much said that they wouldn't civilly commit her, or if they did, even if she was civilly committed, I wouldn't have the right to know when she got out. So what happens is, if we get this law passed, it would shut it down by allowing, for example, my son is 9. If she would have walked, you know, in September, my son would have been 8 years old when she walked out the door. He can't defend himself. What am I supposed to do? Quit work and then go to school with him and
she
be
would
there
come
24
after
hours, right? So then after that, so let's say that this carries out and he's 14 when he still is not mentally prepared to protect himself against his biological mother if she were to show up. And even then, physically, a lot of 13, 14-year-old kids can't defend themselves against an adult. So what it would do, it would allow them to be held on charges until the child reaches age of majority to protect the child.
Because the deal is, even though she's charged with murder, if she's never competent to go to trial within 5 years, they would have to release Catherine, even though charged with murder, and therefore the potential, in your mind, for your third child. Troy, thank you very much. And of course, Catherine has been determined, has battled mental illness and paranoid schizophrenia. So that's one of the reasons she's locked up at the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital and not in jail now.
Well, that's actually something that's odd as well.
But I'll tell you what, we're going to get into this in the podcast. You're going to have to stay tuned, folks.
Definitely. But
there are a lot of issues.
Question, yes, in general.
All right. That will be in next week's Part 2 episode. Thank you, Troy, for coming in.
Thank you.
We have a lengthy discussion about this case in the podcast. To listen to what happened to Sarah and Jacob Hoggle, just go to iTunes on your phone, search for Missing Pieces Fox 5 DC, and subscribe. It's also available on Audio Boom and Google Play. A new episode will be released each Wednesday. We'll also post the series on our website, fox5dc.com. Just click on podcast. We have also set up a special Facebook group where you can get even more updates on the series and extra video recaps. I'll be hosting weekly chats there. To find all that, search Missing Pieces, What Happened to Sarah and Jacob Hoggle on Facebook, guys.
All right, so that was our Bob Barnard, who will be hosting that series of that podcast on that case. And if you're into cold cases, you're into listening to podcasts in your car, on your commute, whatever the case may be, if you're into that stuff, the information was right there. Pretty interesting, right? The second series that we're doing here at Fox 5 DC, and you can access it on iTunes. You can access it on our website. So a lot of ways to get that in your ear for those podcast lovers. I think they're really interesting. Obviously, a lot of future really interesting dramatic stories and rehashing of old historical stories are done via podcast. And I really hope to be maybe even involved in one in the future. I think it's going to be a really cool series. So definitely check it out, guys, if you're interested. In totally other news across to the West Coast, I don't know if you guys heard about this. A couple of days ago, this was released. So it is sort of a couple-day-old story, but there was human waste found contaminating fake cosmetics that were actually on sale at 21 locations, stores in downtown Los Angeles. So gross, so scary, absolutely disgusting. We wrote up that article for our website and for Twitter, and I remember looking through it, and if you're into cosmetics or maybe don't know how to spot a fake one from a real one, this story is for you guys. Check out how officials ended up discussing the bust that involved those fake cosmetics. This is what they had to say.
Well, I'll talk to you offline.
Does that speak to a larger issue, just in terms of, you know, these business owners really don't care, they're going to try to make money regardless?
That's a great question. We like to educate the public because, you know, if there's a consistent consumer demand when it comes to cosmetics here, what we try to do is tell the consumers that it's dangerous. Some of the stuff that you guys are purchasing out there that might be a great deal, it's very dangerous. And that's the fact that, you know, some of the items and bacteria and lead that contains in these makeup, counterfeit makeup, it's just an education piece. And we also like to educate the individuals that are selling these items because sometimes they don't know. And what we do is we educate them or train them and say, hey, what you're doing is illegal, number one. Two, it's dangerous for the community that we serve.
How important is it for people to be educated on what they're buying? As you said, it's tempting. I mean, these are, you know, some of these are very expensive and you get a good deal on them. How important is it just that people do some research before they buy?
The social media epic is huge. And because of social media, you know, this stuff is getting really popular, not just, you know, cosmetic, but everything else also. And they just have to have the newest and the most popular thing out there, right? And, you know, so to let them know and educate them that, you know, what you're ingesting or placing on your face could contain lots of lead, high levels of bacteria, and potentially harm you, that should be, I mean, enough to you know, educate them that this stuff is not safe.
Would you like to disclose the pricing? I kind of learned that, say, like the smoky palettes cost like $40-something.
Correct.
Sephora. What prices that they are selling? Such a good deal.
Right. On the streets, normally speaking, they're about 50 to 75% off from the normal retail price that she just mentioned from the shopping center and malls of, you know, reputable places.
You mentioned something about the over 20 complaints. What was the pattern and what led to this investigation? Were people having some kind of skin reaction? What led to this?
Correct. Well, most of the consumers complained of like skin irritations, like rashes, red rashes, and bumps. And it basically, who did it complain to is the brand owners, right? And then it trickled down to us in the police department.
What's being done to maybe combat this at the source or maybe at the port?
Yes.
I mean, they're probably going to move a block down and just open right back up.
That's a good question. To follow up on your answer, we do have partners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Homeland Security investigations that we try to combat this stuff as it comes through our ports and borders, you know, overseas, air. It doesn't matter. Once they are through our borders, we stop, we inspect, and if there's any traces of counterfeit product that is coming through our borders, we go ahead and seize them. So we do our best to confiscate or seize these items prior to be on the streets.
What's the street value of all this?
Street value is usually about 10% of the retail value, so you're looking at about $70,000.
When consumers going out to buy product, what should they look for? So, for example, Jeffree Star, they might have typo, like the correct spelling should be this and that, and they have the wrong spelling.
You know, the easiest way to identify that something is counterfeit is common sense. Where did you buy it? Did you buy it on the street? Did you buy it in the back of a car? You know, that's the most common. Number two is price. If you're buying for something that's 50 to 75% off, you might want to think again. When it comes to identification and specific colors or the way the product is manufactured, I mean, again, I've been doing intellectual property enforcement for 19 years. And you think I'm an expert, but I still can't identify all that stuff. There's such, I mean, good quality fakes that are out there right now. It is unbelievable. So the most common sense thing is, where did you buy it? How much did it cost you, right? And they're not going to allow you to open the package right there and then and say, hey, is this real? Can I see what it looks like inside? They're not going to allow you to do that. So, just think about, and then buy it at a reputable place, retail store, and then you're going to be good to go. Yes.
How much of an impact is this operation going to have on this at all? Is it just a drop in the bucket at this point?
Yeah, one of the news media outlets actually did a follow-up the following day after we did a quick press release. And she was out there in Santiago, and sure enough, they were already operating and selling the same product. So there's your answer. The monetary gain to this is just unbelievable. That's the main focus. I mean, think about it. An average person on the street selling this stuff profits anywhere from $300 to up to $600 a day. Doesn't seem too much, but if you're making minimum wage, that's a lot of money. That's about $2,000 a week cash. There's no tax taken out or nothing like that. So it really impacts the economy of here in the city of Los Angeles. That's it. All right, so I'll do any follow-up questions you might have offline. Yes. No problem.
What sort of penalties or fines are the people facing that you charged?
Okay. These cases that we placed on arrest were misdemeanor arrest. So this section is a wobbler. It could go both ways, either misdemeanor or felony. But this particular incident, they were mostly employees, and we wanted to, give them the benefit of the doubt and educate them, that this stuff is illegal, one, and number two, dangerous. So I can't really tell you exactly what the fine will be, but I'm sure the city attorney will follow up questions when it comes to that.
So you're saying you arrested the employees?
Some of them are employees, some of them are business owners.
Okay, and what should the employees be held responsible and not the owner?
Both will be responsible.
Are any of those that were arrested repeat offenders?
Yes.
Is there like additional or harsher, I guess, do they have to show up in court? Are there harsher penalties or?
If they're repeat offenders, normally speaking, yes, the penalties or the charges will be upgraded. Any other questions?
Perfect. Thank you. We have Spanish available, and if you guys want to zoom in and get some product video. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Such a crazy story, guys. That was from a couple days ago, and that was LAPD and officials commenting on it. Some of the fake cosmetics that were found were purported to be under the names of Kylie, her new makeup line, Urban Decay, and even MAC. Granted, I believe these were mostly sold in kiosks that were sort of like small shops on the street in Los Angeles. Not quite sure if they were in more reputable stores that someone would find them at. But anyway, nonetheless, scary story, pretty gross. There were some celebrities tweeting about it. But anyway, that was their answer, and pretty informative for people who find this information to be useful and perhaps buy cosmetics on the regular and want to be informed how to spot something that's counterfeit. All right, meanwhile, guys, we have a live look outside of the George Bush Library Center down in Houston. There it is, where Casey Stiegel has been doing live shots all day. Not up there right now, but he was reporting that the visiting hours for Barbara Bush's body will be this Friday, and then later her funeral on Saturday. So we're going to keep our eyes on that and hopefully be able to stream you what we can of that later this week. And also, if we can see it, yeah, here's a White House, shot of the White House right now. Speaking of Barbara Bush, that flag on top of the White House is at half-staff in remembrance of Barbara Bush. So I'm going to show you a couple of stories from across the nation today, some of the top stories that we've been talking about. Of course, the big one, Barbara Bush and her legacy, people talking about her. We're going to continue to have more coverage of that in the coming days. So here are some of our top stories of the day.
Surrounded by family when she died at her home in Houston yesterday, she is being remembered as a first lady who had a grandmotherly image, but one who was never afraid to speak her mind. Barbara Bush's crowning achievement in life may be this, having been at the center of what has been called a political dynasty, a large, close-knit family that she would fiercely defend.
That hurts when people criticize George W. and don't ever dare do it in front of me. Yeah. Or behind me, really.
Born in 1925, Barbara Bush would marry the first man she ever kissed, George H.W. Bush. They would live in Texas at first, but George Bush's political career would take them around the world. They would have 6 children, including a daughter who died at the age of 3. It was a life that would eventually take them to the White House, where her attention turned to literacy. Known as being something of a disciplinarian with a sharp tongue, listen to how deftly she deflected a question about her health just 3 years ago.
Well, I just got tired of, I had a little pneumonia. Okay, literacy.
Literacy, a defining issue for Barbara Bush's public life, but her family was everything. Fox's Dr. Mark Siegel is a family friend who described her final days.
Yesterday, she was sitting with the former president all day, holding hands, and he was with her when she passed. She was strong and courageous till the end.
There will be a private funeral for Mrs. Bush on Saturday in Houston. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
The U.S. Justice Department is again going after opioid manufacturers. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is proposing new regulations limiting opioid production. They would change how the DEA establishes so-called production quotas. Pharmaceutical companies would have to work with various agencies to justify large amounts of pills. Ultimately, the feds would have the final say.
If DEA believes a company's opioids are being diverted or misused, then they will be able to reduce the amount of opioids the company can produce and sell.
The vows to end the crisis are more than just talk. State and federal authorities on Tuesday conducted a massive crackdown in West Virginia and Michigan. The target, a multi-state distribution network called the Peterson Drug Trafficking Organization. West Virginia U.S. Attorney Michael Stewart says this was no street-level raid.
Today's arrest was not a matter of picking up addicts or picking up folks who are corner store drug dealers. This was a matter of trying to change supply.
Tuesday's operation plus other smaller recent raids have netted enough fentanyl to kill a whopping 250,000 people. Stewart and Sessions promise more crackdowns are coming.
Business as usual is over. Ending the drug crisis is a top priority.
According to Sessions, there will soon be substantial increases in funding to combat the opioid crisis. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Federal health officials are investigating a Salmonella outbreak linked to eggs.
In this particular Salmonella outbreak, we have 23 infections in 9 states. There have been 6 hospitalizations, and luckily there have been no deaths reported.
Roseacre Farms, the nation's second largest egg producer, has voluntarily recalled more than 200 million eggs sold under multiple brand names to grocery stores and restaurants in these 9 states. The company explained in a statement, some of the reported illnesses were linked to grocery stores where Roseacre Farms does not supply eggs at all. Nevertheless, the company conducted the recall out of an abundance of caution to ensure that we are doing everything possible to preserve the trust that we have built with consumers and their families for many decades.
So this is another large egg outbreak that we're seeing eggs that were sold in many stores across the country in a lot of different brands. We really want people to check the eggs that are in their refrigerator.
Salmonella outbreaks are common in the U.S., causing an estimated 1.2 million illnesses, 23,000 hospitalizations, and 450 deaths each year, although most people recover after several days of fever, cramps, and other gastrointestinal issues without needing to see a doctor. Consumers can reduce the risk of illness by thoroughly cooking meat and eggs and washing hands and countertops that have come in contact with raw or undercooked food. You can find the product codes for the recalled eggs at FDA.gov. In the current outbreak, the eggs in question were distributed from a farm in Hyde County, North Carolina. Rose Acre Farm says this is the first recall for this facility, which has temporarily suspended delivery of shell eggs. In the meantime, the company is filling orders from its other farms around the country. In Atlanta, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
As the 17th annual Tribeca Film Festival gets underway, co-founders Robert De Niro and Jane Rosenthal talk about how it's acknowledging an industry at the center of the Me Too and Time's Up movements.
We're going to have a special Time's Up Day that will not just focus on entertainment, but on other industries too.
That's what the festival should be about, and that's why we did it.
Having been in the business a long time, De Niro shared his thoughts on the Harvey Weinstein scandal.
I'm surprised. Look, I didn't know certain things. You maybe hear about somebody doing something awful, but nothing like what I've heard about Harvey, and it's you know, it's a very unfortunate, sad situation, and beyond unacceptable that he would behave that way toward actors, toward anybody.
And when it comes to gender equality, they're proud almost half of the submissions this year are from female filmmakers.
It was a very deliberate push. We've always had a lot of women filmmakers, always work with a lot of underserved populations, but this year there was very much a call to action to female submissions and female directors.
The films span a range of subjects. There's also plenty of offerings from TV, plus lots of celebrity sightings, with red carpets rolling out all over New York April 18th through the 29th. In New York, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
Oof, I was just going to say that I love it when there's a good movie package or movie story in our top stories of the day. Always very exciting to look into Tribeca Film Festival. I've always wanted to go. Anyway, guys, we are here in the DC newsroom in this digital studio tracking all the latest news, anything that's breaking for you. And right now, nothing really pressing coming in, but we're going to be watching it for you throughout the afternoon. Meanwhile, Sam's coming up next to kind of host another portion of the stream, but stay on with us for anything that does crop up. I don't really have anything waiting in the wings. I was trying to look for some of our events today that we'll be getting in. Yeah, unfortunately, nothing too pressing coming in this afternoon, nothing with the president as of right now, but you just never know what's going to happen. Just like that yesterday, the emergency landing with Southwest was very sudden and breaking in the middle of our show, so we were able to bring that to you as much as we can. But what a hero that female fighter pilot, former fighter pilot for the Navy was, Tammy, who piloted that plane yesterday. Of course, the emergency landing resulting in 1 fatality, 9 injuries. Pretty unfortunate for Southwest there, and really a tragic day, but hopefully more to come about from NTSB about security measures they're going to put in place and how Southwest is going to change how they inspect some of their vehicles before taking off. Scary day all around for the airline industry. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out with me on our stream on this midday. We're going to stay here, and I'll be watching our feeds and making sure that nothing pressing is coming in for you guys to see. And if it is, we'll bring it to you live. So I'm going to queue up our Eagles once again, and then Sam will take over in the 2 o'clock hour as we have breaking news. So stay with us here, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be part of our Fox 5 DC digital community. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.